Hello, project people. You're listening to the Project Chatter podcast, your trusted source of project experts. I'm Val Matthews, and as always, I'm joined by my friend Dale Fung.
Hello, Val. Awesome. Another week, another pod. And this topic,
Exactly.
I think, is going to be particularly exciting because this appeals to everyone. I think everyone that's ever worked on a project or just worked in any organization has these challenges. So I'm not going to give anything away. I'm just really excited.
No, hopefully you've hooked the listeners there. But just before we get into it, do try and subscribe. I say try. Maybe you should just do. Press the subscribe button on whichever platform you listen to your good podcasts on, and check out our YouTube channel for more of the best podcasts on project professionals out there. And if you'd like to sponsor us, our podcast, that is, get in touch with us at our website, projectchatterpodcast.com. Now let's get into it. In this pod, we are joined by James Crowell to talk about dealing with organizational change when implementing new project management systems. Yes, that's a very, very topical question and topic. Hi, James. How are you, mate?
Good. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Now I'm going to go informal now and call you Jimmy, if that's all right with you. So we're best friends now. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, and we look forward to getting into it. But I know Dale can't wait to share your bio.
Cheers, Val. So Jimmy is an industry consultant for Hexagon based in Singapore. Sorry, that's wrong. Not Singapore. Bangkok. That's changed.
There we go.
I actually just asked you before we hit record. I said, you've changed locations now. Should we change it? And I still got it wrong. So based in Bangkok. In this role, Jimmy supports companies in the evaluation of EcoSys, Hexagon's enterprise project performance software. He has a proven track record of working with leading project delivery companies to eliminate disparate spreadsheets and point solutions in favor of an enterprise project performance system that provides a consistent platform to standardize processes and boost project outcomes. Jimmy has international experience implementing project management systems and holds a bachelor's degree in construction management, a master's degree in business, and is a certified project management professional. As Val says, welcome to the podcast, Jimmy. It is fantastic to have you on the pod. And you are traveled. I mean, we just spoke quite recently and you were based in Singapore and now you're in Bangkok. Before we jump into the topic, can you tell us a little bit about your travels and what the world's looking like at the moment in your part of the world?
Sure. Yeah. So I studied in Orlando, Florida, or grew up in Orlando, Florida, studied in Florida, and then moved to Houston, Texas, started my career there, and then ended up in Singapore, and then now in Bangkok. So just took my experience in the business on projects and brought Asia Pacific to work in a consulting role, helping companies evaluate their systems and see where they can make improvements.
Awesome. So if we jump straight into it, because I'm sure there are many layers we're going to peel back. We like the layer onion analogy. If we start with the root cause of why it's such a challenge dealing with organizational change, particularly when you have these large mega projects in flight or even smaller ones, right? And you're trying to implement new systems. It's quite an upheaval for people. It makes people uncomfortable. One, why do we do it? And should we be doing it for in-flight projects? And two, is it something that should be difficult, or are there ways, and this is where you're smiling going, yeah, there are ways to make it easier for those to embrace, engage with, accept, etc.?
Yeah, well, I think the underlying theme is that companies are not happy with the way that their projects are running, because obviously if your projects are coming in on time, on schedule, everything's great, then you might not have these issues. I've not met a company that has that kind of track record. So it seems like the norm is to have some organized chaos, sometimes not so organized on the project. So it basically, the problems arise at any level. You can have project teams that are complaining about how difficult it is to do their jobs. You can have management complaining about how difficult it is to, get any kind of visibility or real-time information. So I think that there's the desire to change is there. The biggest obstacle is that it's human nature to resist that change. I think everyone wants to change. I haven't met many people that are afraid to hold back on sharing with me what the problems are today. So, but then when you talk about what the solution looks like and what the steps are to take to get there, then it's like, well, not on my project though. I'm all supportive. But go start on that project over there. So I think in-flight projects are fine to, you have to start somewhere. You can do, some companies are more comfortable with pilot projects. I tend to recommend against this approach because all that does is it just drags out the whole process. It drags out all the other projects are going to continue having this pain for a year while you're doing your pilot project. And and then I've seen like you get to the requirements for the change, or if you're implementing a new system, the requirements tend to be centered around that one project, and you lose sight of what the whole organization needs. So there's no problem with just going with a big bang approach and implementing a system across all projects. Software vendors are used to doing data migration to get existing projects up and running in the new system, and there can be a period of running the projects in parallel, until you get comfortable with the new system. But yeah, no problem with starting an in-flight project.
Yeah, that's quite interesting because, if you just scale that down, it doesn't even have to be a huge new project management system, just a small change sometimes. And people, throw their hands up in there and why are we changing this? And I guess what you're alluding to there is a little bit of stakeholder management, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Bring people along the journey. That always helps. But I often find in your example there, when people come and say, "Oh, this doesn't work," I try and say to them, "Okay, well, what do you want to do?" Which is quite interesting as well, because often people don't know. They love a moan, but they actually don't have a solution, and they're moaning to you because they want a solution, and then you give them one, and then, as you say, they go, "No, not that one."
But actually, I gravitate towards those people because I want to talk to the person that is against the system the most, because if they're the loudest against you, I've usually found that there's something under there that is a real issue that you might be missing. So like I've implemented these systems so many times, and you come across people that are like, this cannot work for this type of project or my project, or it doesn't do this or doesn't do that. But then if you get past the way that they're delivering their message might not be the best approach, but there is some validity to their argument, and then you just deliver what they need. Okay, maybe it's missing some functionality, and you deliver that, and then I've seen you turn them around to be the biggest advocates for the tool. So it can work in your favor, rather than I've seen other people try to suppress these these arguments, or try to go back and forth. But if you just hear them out and actually fix the issue that they're complaining about, then they're really going to appreciate that and see the immediate value. Like that's a great thing I love when someone says this, the system can't do this, and then you go and do it, and then they're like, oh, okay, I'm sold. It's like it can do anything now. So that's a good. I don't mind the people that are shouting against it.
No, it's great. It's great that we started with the human side of the challenges as well. But if we just lift it up for those perhaps listening in, getting into project management, project
Yeah.
control space, why do we need a system? What should it be doing for the project
Yeah.
and for the organization? Just some of those basics, just so we lay the foundation and then we can dive deeper into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, we are living in a world with exponential data growth, and it's just become impossible to manage this. And there's so much with the advancement of technology, there's so much that the software can do to automate your life. I mean, you've seen that in your personal life. You know, if you don't believe me, you can ask Siri. You know how much she's helped you. So you know, I think that we just want systems in place to just make life easier, eliminate the boring work of, you know, compiling data and downloading, uploading. All these things are just not a good use of time. So you can, it's not about, you know, it's not about like replacing someone's job with a technology. It's actually enabling them to be better at their job, so that, you know, when you get into a situation like we're in today with the aging workforce, a lot of highly skilled people are retiring, exiting the workforce, and you need to have a way to capture that knowledge. And a system is a perfect way to do that, so that you can, you know, then enable, you know, your up and coming employees to be able to, you know, expand on that knowledge. So it's just getting away from, you know, spreadsheets and outdated processes. The same way we've advanced from pen and paper to go into, you know, into computers, you know, software is now in place to automate these project processes that are pretty standard and pretty repetitive.
Yeah, no, thank you for laying that foundation. And I think Val and I have previously discussed this. I don't think we should be scared of replacing people's jobs and roles, because there are some that actually are non-value add.
Yeah.
And so, you know,
Like what?
we should be looking.
List them.
You've got the full definitive list, Val. We'll pass to you in a second to list them. But I was just wondering there, one more question for me before I hand to Val was around when you go in and you discuss with various organizations their needs, how much of it is they know versus they don't know? And how much is it while you're actually advising them, telling them what they should be doing? Because you can, I'd imagine, get pretty strong organizations that go, well, this is what we definitely want. And from your experience and what you've seen, you know, across industry, you're going, well, actually, that's not what you need. I wonder then, those listening in go, well, actually, we've seen this happen as decisions have been made at the top. They don't fit for delivery in our particular organization. Is there a set methodology that companies can look at to understand what their requirements actually are, rather than just typically driven by the standard KPIs they always want? And we need to, you know, because as we've discussed before, KPIs drive behavior, and you've got the wrong KPIs, you've got the wrong behavior. So I just wonder if you could share some of your insight and experience on that.
Yeah. So yeah, we've got two, I would classify as two types of customers. The first one is what you've described as basically they already have, so they're a mature company. They've got systems, processes in place. Maybe they've developed their own system in-house, or, you know, they're using some products off the market. You have those types of customers, and I think that what they appreciate, what they're looking for is an easier way to, you know, they're still having these pain points. You know, they're further along than most, but they're still having these challenges. So they're looking for an enabling platform. So something that allows them to just take their knowledge and their best practices and put that into a tool. And that's fine. And usually these mature, you know, project delivery organizations, they are not far off from what we would recommend as a best practice anyway. And then you have the other type, which is like the very younger, less mature organization that needs someone to give them the direction, needs a best practice. They know they have a problem, but they don't know what the solution is. So then software today, like ours and others on the market, I mean, it's designed to make you successful from the get-go. So you don't have to provide that much input. So you can accommodate both types of needs.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Val, over to you for that definitive list of which positions are going to be made redundant by technology.
Oh, I never said that, but yeah, I like being put on the stick, and
Well,
I will get to it. I will get to it because I think it's an interesting conversation. But before we
did
get there, Jimmy,
yeah, oh, go ahead.
I go. No, you go, mate.
I was just going to say, it was the end of 2019. It was just before the pandemic, and when Gartner came out with that stat, 80% of project management tasks will be eliminated by 2030, and that was before the pandemic. And I think that was fast forwarded to probably by next year it's going to look completely different. So I think the way that we're going to work is going to be different. So
no, I remember reading something like that. It was very bold to alert the public like that. But I agree with Dale. You can't fret about diminishing returns, right? You've actually got to improve your value exchange in this project environment, and it's always changing. So each project is a unique endeavor, as Dale says every time we have a podcast, almost. And he says, well, then each resource is a unique resource. We don't necessarily need to put them all in the same pot. I'm just going to rewind back because there was a great thing you said at the start, which I don't think many people do say at the moment because they're quite risk averse, which was there's nothing wrong with a big bang approach. And usually when you go into these big organizations, they're thinking money and they're thinking risk. And unfortunately, we have examples where big bang approaches have gone wrong, and they lose a lot of money, and there's a lot of, I guess, embarrassment and PR problems with spending, let's say, $10 million on a technology project that goes wrong. But there's so many unknowns as well sometimes with software. But I think we've come a long way, and particularly the last 5 years. I think software, all you have to do is really attend a project controls convention or a roadshow, and you'll see how many software or SaaS companies are invested in the space versus 5-10 years ago. So we certainly see more maturity in that space, which is exciting, and diversity and competition, which is fantastic because that's good. But then if you look at it from a client or an end user's perspective, the proof of concept or the pilot is attractive because it is lower risk to implement. But like you said, it will take longer to implement and win the hearts and minds of people. So back to your point of big bang, what do you say to, I guess, clients that maybe are apprehensive with the big bang versus the pilot? I mean, these are very generic terms, but what do you say to them to disarm them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair request. You have to, if you put yourself in if I put myself in a customer's shoes, I'm doing this consulting every day. This is probably the first time that they're implementing the software themselves. So they're probably terrified, and they don't want to, don't want to choose the wrong one. They don't want to make a mistake. So, if you go with an experienced vendor, you'll be in better hands because we've made mistakes, but we've learned from that. So when someone asks for a pilot, or how do we proof of concept, what's worked well for me in the past is just getting them to share some sample data of what they're currently doing today. Share with me a couple of reports or whatever spreadsheets, whatever you've got, and what we can do is mock that up for them, so they kind of just need to be able to see their data in the software. Because if you do a software demo with just some generic data, it's kind of hard for most people, especially if they're not very technical, to relate to it. But then when you just get their work breakdown structure, get their couple of their reports, and you can actually show them this is what it will look like now. That seems to work, and then everyone's happy. They can see that it's been done with their data, and then you can move forward much quicker.
Yeah. And I agree at this point around organizational change is really about basically taking the vision out of your head, because you know you work in it every day, and putting
Right.
it in their head. And sometimes seeing is believing. And I think, for the people that don't really get that and grasp that, the idea is that you're actually talking their language when you consume or ingest
Yep.
some of their data
Yep.
and information and their terminology and their acronyms.
That's
When they see it, or oh, you're using my colors to paint that picture. That's fantastic. I can see now. Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic.
You would be shocked at how big a difference just colors make. I mean, yeah, I've worked with companies. I mean, they have reports called the orange and black report. Like that.
Oh my goodness.
And they just want to be able to. They want to see. The thing is that these companies, they've already socialized these reports, and management is used to seeing them, but they want to still produce those same reports, which is fine, but it's all formatted the way that they like, with their logos and all of that, but they just want to make it easier to produce. So yeah, you'd be shocked at how showing changing the colors, the captions, because you guys know a system like this, the system can be applied to any type of project, but when you're selling it to different industries, they really need to see their terminology to be able to relate to it. So it is important, but those are like such surface level details that make the biggest difference. It's funny.
That's why we were laughing in the background. I think Dale was thinking the same thing I was thinking, because I'm a big believer of pastel colors, Jimmy. And for whatever reason, Oracle has gone out of their way to produce the worst color spectrum ever.
Yeah.
It's the only color combination that's ever offended me when I walk past it. If I see a bright dark blue with a yellow ever again, and you're right. Their colors have feelings, and feelings are how people make decisions. And so when you relate to people in the colors that they talk, there something magical happens. And yeah, it's very interesting. I had another question around the organizational change piece. So I think Dale touched on asking a little more about the methodology. So is there a right way when dealing with implementation as such? So how do you prep for it? Do you go to an Anthony Robbins kind of 2-day event, pump yourself up? Do you prime in the morning? How do you convey that confidence? And then is there a process flow or a method that people could adopt out there to help?
Yeah. Well, first you have to go all in as an organization on all levels. It does not work well when you have just it's being pushed from the top down. That's I generally see that as the method that is most common, is someone at the C level or nearby, it decides that they need this, they need to make this, the purchase of software, they need to make a change, and the projects are not on board, they're not buying into it, and they look at it as just something else that needs to be updated, another burden on them. So you don't really get that, buy-in. So it's really important to engage at all levels of get the support all the way up. So how you do that, depending on who I'm talking to, obviously the value proposition and the messaging is going to be different, because the value that a VP looking over all projects, the value that they're going to get from a software is different from a cost analyst. But you have to make sure that everybody's life is improving. If you do that, focus on that one thing, then you'll find that people cannot get enough of the software. You want it to be a pull. You want them to be like, I want this on my project, instead of, oh yeah, don't put that on my project. So you get that through, you accomplish that by performing workshops and the decision making party. I've noticed the decision making has grown. So many people are involved in the decision-making process now. Rarely do I see, a single person stick their head out and make a purchase on a whim. So I do see the trend is like the organizations realize that it's better to get the buy-in and move together. So yeah, those are just some of the tips I would have.
Yeah, no, great. I really appreciate those. I think, you kind of mentioned stakeholder management in general in the workshops. So you can't get away from it. So as much as we move forward, we still actually think we're humanizing more than we used to. So technology is helping us connect in a new way. It might be new and unusual for some, but I think what it does allow is for us to elevate and enhance our skills as well. So I agree with your point. From top down and bottom up, I think you've got to get that balance right, and not a lot of organizations do. But is there a cap? I mean, my last question before I jump over to Dale to ask a few questions: how big does an organization have to be before it's too dangerous to do a big bang? Like, is it 100 people, 200, 1,000, 3,000, a 65,000 employee, like an ERP system? Let's say you roll out something that's going to affect 3,500 or 60,000 people, and they won't get their pay if the system isn't done properly. When does it become too dangerous to do big bang?
Well, you can there. When I say, I guess, let me explain what I mean by big bang, because sure, if you're dealing with these huge companies that have want to get every office, they have thousands of projects around the world. Yeah, it's not going to happen overnight. But what I mean by big bang is try not to start with just one project at a time. Like have a plan to do. That's fine to do a phased approach, whether you want to organize it geographically, conquer one area, one location at a time, or do it by business unit. But you can definitely move faster than you think. I guess that's the message that I wanted to get across there.
Yeah, brilliant.
That is awesome. Because as you say, big bang, a lot of people just think everything, right?
And I think, the more requirements that, the more input, it goes along with buy-in. I mean, if you do have a representative, let's say you're working with a global company, if you do have representatives from all of the regions, they shouldn't be in the dark. They should be contributing to requirements. So they're not surprised. Maybe they don't go online all at the same time. You can only manage so many, it's like herding cats, so you can only manage so many people at one time, but they should be contributing to the process, because I have seen it not go well when you keep certain business units or certain regions in the dark. Then you have to overcome this stigma that, like, the system doesn't have my requirements in it, or it's only for this type of project or that. So you should have coordination and cooperation from everybody.
No, very good advice there. And I'm going to ask you, I know you've taken your Hexagon hat off for this. You're not trying to sell anything, which is great.
Nope.
But I'm going to ask you to take the coat and the tie off as well.
Okay.
If you were the organization assessing which sort of software to use, what to implement, how would you go about it? What would you look out for? What are the pitfalls out there these days that you should go, that's a warning sign, don't bring that in? I know it depends on what the organization wants to start off with, but then surely there might be some things to look out for when looking at the various options out there. Yeah,
absolutely. So I would say the biggest thing is that it used to be you would have to you purchase a software and you would have to adapt to it, but nowadays you should be looking for a software that adapts to you, so it becomes less disruptive that way. So you want a software that is configurable, as opposed to requires coders and development, that sort of thing. You want to enable business users to be able to make the changes, and as their needs evolve, you want them to be able to support themselves. So you don't want a software that relies too heavily on IT's engagement. So nowadays, IT's purpose, it should just be to keep the system online. So they're all web-based applications. You need to be connected, and there's enough of them within an organization that in itself is enough to keep IT busy. You shouldn't have to translate requirements over to IT and then they deliver on that. It just doesn't, they don't speak, project people and IT, they don't speak the same language. You know, I've sort of made my career as being a translator, basically, between the two sides. Like I can speak enough of both sides that they both understand me. So you know, you want software to work for you and to be easy to use, you know, intuitive. You want all those kind of things. I think if I mean, if you do a Google search, I recently did a Google search for project management software, something like that, and it was like, I don't know, 60 million results. And, you know, wow. I don't know about you, but when was the last time you went to the second page of Google results? Because I don't know if I've ever visited the second page. So, you know, there's a lot of companies, you know, there's a lot of vendors out there. So it is difficult to differentiate all of them from each other. But what other things could you look for? You want a, you know, obviously you want to work with a company that encourages you to kind of tailor the product to your own needs. So some of the vendors, that the product is so rigid that it's like, you know, they discourage you from making any changes to it, and so that defeats the purpose of having something like really you know, tailor-made. So you want you know, something that can adapt to your needs, something that's easy to, you know, ask about the upgrade process, because one of the things, you know, oftentimes it's not just Hexagon, but any vendor in the space, they're going to be meeting with a company, and a lot of times they will be replacing a homegrown system. That's usually what you walk into. You walk into a bunch of spreadsheets, maybe a homegrown system. So the problem with that homegrown system is it was designed, you know, 5 years ago. It's outdated. The person that built it is no longer with the company. You can't upgrade it. It's expensive for IT to maintain. All of these problems. So you want to look for something that doesn't have those problems.
No, thanks, Jimmy. Some good tips and advice there for those listening in. And you mentioned IT and the role they should or shouldn't play. And that reminded me of Val and his debate with Caroline Patterson back in season 1, where Val was firmly in the camp of, we have to have IT within the controls, under controls and PMO, because, you know, we know best what we need. And Caroline was like, no. And Caroline's a PMO person as well. A very good one indeed. And she was like, no, they should be separate. Where do you sit, Jimmy, on with, you know, those two camps? What are your thoughts? Should IT be within the controls PMO space for a project management organization, or should they sit firmly outside?
So I'm of the position that they should be separate. But I want to ask Val if I think I know where he's coming from, or I have a hunch by wanting to include them, is he's probably thinking that it is, you know, you need IT to be developing these systems for you. So if I ask Val, what if all of your tools were configurable by non-technical people, by business users, project users, and they could just go on their way, kind of like a developer, then would you agree that you know, that IT could be separate and just responsible for keeping systems online and up to date?
Well, this is where I think we talk about redundant roles, and I think the role of the IT business unit in general is not going to be around for long. And I think there's always going to be you know, if we split the hemispheres, if you split IT into two halves, there's always a back-end infrastructure management support network, right, where they're managing firewalls and servers and that kind of thing. I think that's inherently going to stay the same. You'll have probably more machines managing it than people. But I agree with your point around the IT front of face or front of house, where IT won't be required to configure systems because most systems are configurable themselves. If you take Office 365 as a perfect example, where it's low cost, a low barrier to entry, and it's very, very easy to use. And they do that on purpose. It's a subscription model where they know what they're doing. They know that people know how to use Excel. They've made Power BI almost, very similar, Power Query. The idea is to kind of wean them on very slowly to a self-serve configurable system. Yep. And most of them do that now. I'm sure Hexagon does it. I'm sure other systems and tools do that out there, where I don't think we'll need coding by the time our kids grow up. Coding will be autonomous. It'll be more about the intention of why you're doing it. So the machine will ask, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Have you thought of this? And you'll have the option to, I guess, prescribe or predict it'll have the idea of prescribing or predicting what you might want to do with it. So my view with Carolyn was, we had this debate, Jimmy, and we still don't agree, and I work with her a lot. And the traditional roles, I think, are not going to be around. And we had Anne Bamford and Steve Wake on talking about fusion skills, and how I think everyone's going to be a little bit of IT, and everyone's going to be a little bit of a change manager and a risk manager and a costy. Project controls have been doing this for a while, but I think the concept of project controls is going to widen, and everyone's going to be a little bit of project controls, which is a great idea. So yeah, I agree with your premise that, which I think is agreeing with me, right, Jimmy? That IT, yeah. Okay,
don't let him twist your arm, Jimmy.
So my long-winded view is that yes, and to be honest, if you do look at if we go back to implementation, if you do look at how big projects are implemented, IT can be the biggest blocker to implementing new systems, and it's not their fault. And so anyone in IT, don't get upset with me. What happens is the business decides something. It's like the left not talking to the right.
Yeah.
Halfway through the implementation, someone brings in Dougie, and Dougie had no idea. He's in charge of architecture. You're messing his whole life up and making it very difficult by throwing in a whole new system. And then he puts up the fence, and suddenly your whole project's delayed by 6 months, 12 months, and he doesn't care about the cost. So that's kind of a scenario I was in, and it can happen. And so I think bringing IT into the business is better. They understand the requirements and they understand what you're talking about, and they speak the same language. That's my view.
No, that's awesome. Is Dougie a real person, Val?
He actually is. Yeah. So
shout out to Dougie. Awesome.
He probably doesn't like project controls that much. We gave him so much grief, but in the end, he was really, really great. It was a positive story in the end, but he was not happy when he found out what we were doing. So yeah, shout out to Dougie. Good man.
Shout out to Dougie, indeed. Thank you, Val, for clarifying that and adding to it.
Yeah,
so if we look at the golden triangle, people, process, tools, we've spoken a little bit about tools, well, quite a lot about tools. We've spoken a little bit about people, and we'll go into process in a second, but just one more on people. In real life scenarios, Jimmy, you've gone in and you've implemented new systems. How has it changed people's roles? Now, because those listening in go, okay, we've just spoken about, it might make things redundant, certain roles redundant. But from your experience, how has it changed their roles, positive and negative, please, not just the positives?
Okay. Start with the positive first. Actually, start with the negative and end on a positive note.
There we go.
The negative, what I've seen is it's the people that, generally they, just the older people that have been doing this the same way for so long that they're set in their ways. You can't teach old dog new tricks kind of mentality, that are just, just not willing to participate or do the bare minimum. So you get, those people, I've seen them get pushed out just because they're not supportive of the direction that the company wants to head. Now, on the positive side, I've found that the people that embrace the change, if you think about it, if you're on a project, if I'm a cost analyst, project controls manager, project manager, anybody, if I see, I'm smart enough to realize that if a company has invested a lot of money into a new tool or a new direction, that there's going to be a lot of support, a lot of drive behind that. You kind of want to be a part of that. You want to be the one that's kind of how I started. That's how I got in this position, like how I got to be this like implementing systems. Is the first company that I had worked with out of school, they said, oh, we bought this new tool. Who wants to implement? Who wants to be in charge of implementing it? And everyone was like, not me. And I was like, I'm just green behind the ears, like, okay, yeah, what is it? I'll do it. So then I started to, learn about the tool, and had to learn quickly about how the existing processes, the flaws in those, and, have to basically convert these, experienced, I'm 20, 23, 24 years old, teaching these veterans, industry veterans, how to do their job now in the 21st century. So, it can create a lot of opportunities if you get behind the change. Like I'll give you some. You could have, let's say a listener is thinking about, like a job security. Okay, let's talk about that. So I've seen that where what this does now, what I'm getting to is that having a standardized system or process in place allows people to move around a lot easier, where it used to be, you would just have like, you have a cost analyst. Okay, let's say they're working on the project, they've got their spreadsheets, their macros, everything's all nice and tidy how they like it. Okay, they quit and they go to another, they take another job, they retire, whatever, what have you. This has happened before. And then what happens is a new person gets assigned to take over their, to take over on the project. They inherit all of this mess to them, because they don't know what is happening. They don't know what the current state of affairs are. So what I've seen happen is the company actually had to hire back the person that left to do a proper handover with the new the new cost analyst. And that's just, if you're running projects, that's a nightmare scenario in terms of a seamless handover. It's far from it. But you might be thinking that if you're that guy that that had to get hired back, you might be thinking, oh, you're pretty valuable, you've got some job security. But I would challenge that person and say, if they were to use their skills to actually provide the input, they might have some good practices, some good input to provide into the development of the new software that's being rolled out. Then they actually have created another career path for themselves and made themselves even more valuable. So yeah, I think it can be a positive if you get behind the change and you're willing to change. Yeah, I've seen a lot of good things come from it.
Now that's interesting, because I think both Val and I have seen that before as well. Both people creating a little industry for themselves, because they think they're immovable by it. But sometimes it happens just because of necessity, because there isn't anything, and that's okay as well, as long as you say you're willing to change and adapt to it. But just replaying some of what you're saying, I think my takeaway is generally in terms of how roles do change with improved systems, is that particularly in the control space, and this has obviously an impact on delivery as well, we move away from a lot of the doing of the past into more of the analysis. And the information is processed in a quicker speed, so we can make quicker decisions on projects ultimately. That's certainly what I've seen in my experience with integrated tool sets coming together. Now, as you've alluded to, not all systems are made equal, not all processes are the same. So I then wonder, in terms of processes, how much, and this is my final one before I hand to Val, how much is it the tool driving the process versus the process driving the tool?
Yeah, you can be successful with any tool. Okay, don't tell my company I said that, but
don't listen, Hexagon, don't listen to this podcast.
Yeah, it's not the tool. Certainly, different tools have different bells and whistles and levels of difficulty on implementing them. So there's of course differentiators between the softwares. But if you just get the, if you follow the right, the right steps, if you're guided in the right direction, if you have the right mindset, if you have the buy-in at all levels, then you'll be more successful. So that's the secret, is like, you can work with whatever you've got, and it's all about the people and getting those, that's why we're talking about organizational change. That's a big, for me, that's a bigger thing to manage than the actual implementation of the software. I mean, we can get the software, you get the software turned on overnight. That's not a big issue. Load it up with some data. It doesn't take long these days. So, but the change, getting people to unfreeze their habits is the kicker.
No, I agree. And I will pass to Val just one final comment, just as you're talking there. I was thinking, Val mentioned there's risk that people consider, when adopting new projects or implementing new project management software. But I think there's also a trust element, because if you know your old process and you know it inside out, you go, I know exactly how that piece of data starts off life here and ends up over there, because I know the process. Yep. Now it's been built in some tool and I can't see it and I don't trust it. So just an observation. And maybe you want to comment on that, Jimmy, before we go to Bell.
That's why I said earlier, I'm fine if you want to run your process in parallel for for your first reporting cycle or first month, do things your old way in parallel with the new way, and until you're comfortable that everything is looking the same, that's fine. But what you'll find is, another positive note, is that I've seen now where people are they're able to work on projects that they weren't really qualified to work on before, because of their experience was so niche into one business unit, that now I've seen people moving across business units that you wouldn't normally find on those types of projects, but because they're already familiar with the tool set, because they've been using it on their projects, that it's just, they can now learn the new line of business instead of have to learn new line of business and new tools and new way of doing things. So that I've seen as a positive as well.
Yeah, and I was just going to add even one more step to that. If you think, even when you got the trust and you understand the process, sometimes this transparency factor tells them things that they do not want to know or do not want out there. And so you're almost in this kind of conflict where they know what the right thing is to do. The right thing to do is to implement, tools fit for purpose, fit for scale. We understand this, integrate systems, but then they don't like the answer.
Yeah.
And
seen
that. You've seen that? I would love to hear your experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was, implementing the system from the customer side, so I was responsible for the success of the tool, but on the customer side. And I would get, I'm administering this tool. I'm supporting all of the people that are using it, making sure that they're successful. And my favorite call to get was, EcoSys, the name of our software. EcoSys is wrong. And I would get that call, and that's my favorite call to get, because I'd be like, okay, let's investigate that. And then you dig down into it, and it's actually just putting in plain sight an issue that was already there that you would have never seen before. So it does tell you, we like to say, it's a single source of truth, but it's the truth. There's no masking it. So that transparency, you really have to come to terms with it. It provides a whole, a level of, it's uncomfortable for some people.
Yeah. I've certainly been in that situation. I know Dale has as well. It's not a full podcast, Jimmy, until I talk about the future, and I love talking about the future. And I reference Elon Musk way too much, But I will stop doing that because he's gone wacko. No, he's all right. Jimmy from Bangkok, I want to know from your perspective, what is the future of software? So right now we have I would call a saturated market in the project space. You mentioned millions of references of hundreds of thousands of different tools. It feels like there's a new tool coming out to do the same thing. And you see that in a thriving environment, right? It's a good thing. But I kind of put it to Nat Moyers, who's in the Dell Tech space, and I'll probably ask Dan Patterson next time we have him on from Innate. But what I wanted to know was, are we getting to a point where there'll be some sort of convergence, and rather than a pre-built interface, we'll have a blank screen, and through a series of prompts and probes, the intuitive system will build whatever it is based on the simple thing that everything we do from a software perspective and a project controls perspective is based on algorithms and rules. And that's all it is. And, I really think we need to manage, well, what I'd like to see for the community of project controls is to focus more on quality, which I think, machines can't do right now. They really can't. They're not smart enough to decipher the difference between good quality, bad quality, and when someone's lying and that qualitative gap. But do you see somewhere in the future where we won't have the need for so many tools and there'll be one to rule them all kind of thing? Is that?
Yeah, it could. I could see that. I mean, I'm seeing that these tools, there's more in common than different between these tools, and then if one tool develops something, we see something that's out on the market, we're like, oh, we want that in our, let's put that in our tool. And I'm sure everyone else is doing the same when when we come out with new stuff. So I think eventually that there'll be this convergence, and there'll be clear leaders. There's always going to be a lot of noise out there, but I agree with what you said. We used to sell our software like that as a blank box. Like today we sell with like a standard product like everybody else on the market has always done. But I like that approach where it's just pick and choose like a shop, adding to your shopping cart, and you want estimating, okay, add it in. You want you want budgeting and forecasting, you want this. I can see that. I mean, you mentioned Elon Musk. I mean, you can buy a car online now. You don't have to even go. You don't have to talk to a salesperson. So could be software could be just like that. It should be. You should just be able to visit our website and and just say, okay, this is how many users you have. These are their this is their role, and you need this kind of functionality, and then you just you download the software and off you go. So it should be that easy.
I was just thinking while we're talking, because sometimes I talk before I filter myself, and then I just counted myself. I was like, but the only problem is a lot of people in our space don't actually know what they want, and that's probably where we get people like Jimmy in there, because like I got the blank canvas. Did you know you could link your estimations with your schedule, and you can do all this fancy CAD stuff? And a lot of the time, I don't think actually clients know the full breadth of what's available. But I guess then you go to the Walt Disney method. Then you say, well, actually, anything you can imagine is available. Then okay, then it works in that scenario. But I think there's still a world for Jimmy's.
I think the biggest key is how well the provider's software plays with your existing architecture, because I think we're not going to get to a place where every company is using the same tools, because all these industries are different. Companies have different suite of tools. So what we will get to a place where you need to be able to plug in, like phones, with a standard USB-C charger. Everything needs to connect, as easy as that. I mean, just like you buy adapters, and it just needs to be as easy as that. If you have a software that does that, then I think you'd be successful in the future.
Well, I have seen a few. I mean, I know Oracle's got Unifier. I know Dell brought out this integrated called Boom. I know there's free open source ones like Zapier and and all that. But I agree. I think you're right. One of the problems we have with systems is like no one wants to let go of the tools that they can bring in. People bring in to the organization their own tools and their own poisons, and once they've got them, that's it. It could be spreadsheets. It could be Primavera. We talked to Michael Lepage about P6, and that's not the best scheduling tool, but it certainly seems to be the founding stone to a lot of the PPM tools out there. And you go, but why? It doesn't play nice with others. I mean, they're getting better, but we need tools that do have that ability to plug and play. And you look at some of these newer softwares as well; they seem to be on it very quickly. Like they're not very obviously very practical, like the Mondays and that. But I think Just Do as well is trying to integrate as much as possible with as many. So they are getting the message that playing nicely with others is a good thing, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to get all the market share. I think the other thing I wanted to mention, Jimmy, was there's a lot of products out there where they're trying to, you have to buy the whole suite. I know this is the Microsoft way of doing things. We don't want you to buy one thing. We want you to buy the whole suite, and they're separate subscriptions. And you're like, Jesus Christ, I just want a tool that does X, Y, and Z and gets me this answer. And it can be not analysis by paralysis, but whatever the system version of that is. Do you encounter a lot of that?
Oh yeah, I mean, look at us. Today we're on Zoom. It's a Zoom. Zoom found their market by, they recognize that not every company, not everybody has the budget to buy to go in business with Microsoft and get in Microsoft Teams, and it's for the big guys. So Zoom has made it easy to just get what you need. You need video conference, cheap and easy, and that's what it does. So you can compete.
Yeah, brilliant. Dale, over to you, mate.
No, it's fascinating. It's such an interesting space talking about the future and trying to go into the crystal ball and what the art of the possible, and it's infinite. But I think it's what's feasible, what's acceptable, what will be adopted, etc. And you got to try and meet that, because as we say, we are human and we sometimes struggle with change. But thank you for all of that insight, Jimmy. We're heading towards the end of the podcast, and we do have a feature which is called Defend the Indefensible. It's a bit of fun, where it's inspired by ridiculous statements that we hear every day. And what we do is we throw a ridiculous statement at our guest, and we ask him or her, you in this instance, to defend that. So I'm going to give you a statement. You'll have 30 seconds to argue for this ridiculous statement. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So your 30 seconds starts after I read out the statement. We don't need new systems. We've been delivering projects perfectly for many years.
Yep. All right. I think that the way we've been doing it is just fine. I am happy with the way that I've been running my project. We can just have a workshop internally and talk about I can share the way my best practices. I can share that with others, and we don't need a system to do that. So we've been doing this for the last 20 years. Why should we make the change now? So
awesome. And 30 seconds on the dot as well. So
perfect.
Well done.
Well done.
A bit of fun there at the end, Jimmy. Thank you for being a good sport. It's been great to have you on the podcast. And as we head to the end of it, is there any final thoughts, words of inspiration that you want to leave the listeners with?
Well, I enjoyed the discussion. I hope that it was insightful and not boring, and maybe even a little motivational for the listeners, to kind of take a look back and not be so overwhelmed by this process, because I do realize that it's a lot of people's first times going down this path. They may know projects very well, but they might not know systems very well. So I just encourage them to just keep improving, always be optimizing. That's my philosophy in life, and I think that it's a good one to have on your projects as well.
A great philosophy, and I do honestly think you've provided us with some fantastic insight and great tips, and I'm sure the listeners will take a lot from that. Val, any final thoughts from yourself?
Jimmy, I'll have to meet you in Bangkok at some point when I get out of lockdown.
Absolutely.
But no, it was an absolute pleasure to meet you.
When are we going to be done with lockdown? That's what I want to know.
If you can tell me, I'll book my tickets now. But no, pleasure. I think you're right. I think that was a great conversation. You really had some insightful points there. I had a manager once, and I think Dale and I follow by the same mantra, fail fast, fail forward. And he used to say it a lot rougher. He would say adapt or die, but I thought that's a bit rough. But the idea is, if you accept change as the only constant, then, you're kind of at peace with it, and you roll with the punches. So I think given COVID and all the other uncertainties in the future, it's resilience and adapting to change is one of those key skills I think everyone out there should learn. And I think that's what you're advocating today. So thanks for your time. Yeah, thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Awesome. So did we. Jimmy, just before we go, we have a surprise pop quiz at the end.
All right.
It's called Tenor. 10 questions and 10 answers from yourself. It shouldn't take too long because you should know the subject matter very, very well. Right. Val, over to you. Are you ready?
I hope so. I guess I have to be.
Yes, you do. It's pop quiz as quick as you can. Don't spend too much time on it. You'll smash through this. There's no tricky questions or curved questions.
All right.
Okay, question 1. Ready? Is what's your morning routine?
Morning routine: coffee as soon as possible.
Bing. Would you rather spend your day with people or technology?
People. Good people.
Nice. How do you deal with stress?
Exercise fixes it.
What is the best book you've been gifted?
Nobody's gifted me. People recommend books. I would say
buy him a book, Dale. Jesus.
Yeah, you're gonna send us your address. We'll get your book.
Yeah, the Bitcoin Standard was a good one.
Oh, nice. If you could choose to spend a day with anyone past or present, who would it be and why?
Michael Jordan. Childhood looked up to him. I played a lot of basketball.
Oh, awesome. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
The harder you work, the luckier you get.
I've heard that before. What is the biggest mistake you've ever made on a project?
I think being just totally messing up a bunch of data, just losing data, I think is a pretty catastrophic mistake.
What advice would you give your 10-year-old self?
My 10-year-old self? Keep doing what you're doing.
Good work. What profession other than your own would you have liked to have attempted?
I think I would have been a good lawyer. Would have liked to do that.
If you had to spend $1 million, what is it in Bangkok? Baht? What? No.
Yeah.
What do they call it with the currency?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
$1 million baht's not much, though, is it?
No.
No. All right, let's do $1 million. We'll do $1 million. Well, if you had to spend $1 million in a day, what would you spend it on?
U.S. dollars, right?
US Zimbabwean.
Yeah. I think I would put it in after reading Bitcoin Standard. I'd dump it into Bitcoin.
Hey, there we go. Yeah, exactly. Good answer. Well done, sir. Dale, up to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Val. And thank you, Jimmy, for being such a great sport. I think the saying of the hard I work, the lucky I get, I think it came from Gary Player, South African golf, ex-South African golfer. Yeah, I think originally.
He Googled that.
No, I didn't.
My mom likes to take credit for that one. So now I know. Now I know.
You got it.
She got it. Yeah.
Jimmy's mom. It came from Jimmy's mom.
Yeah. Right.
And then Gary Player heard it from Jimmy's mom, and then he said it. We've clarified that one. Thank you, Jimmy. It's been amazing to have you on the podcast.
Yeah.
And we'd love to see how things develop in the technology space, and we'll stay in touch to see if there's any more insight we can get you back for in the future. So folks, that is all we have time for on this episode, but it doesn't have to stop here. Support our charities, access blogs, or if you think you have something interesting to share, visit projectchatterpodcast.com. Don't forget to hit subscribe on our YouTube channel and your favorite podcast player so you don't miss the next one. A massive thank you to Jimmy Crowell, and thank you all for listening. Till next time, we say stay safe, be disruptive, and have fun doing it. From me and Val, it's bye for now.